Welcome to the Exponent Audio Insider Podcast. My name is Lenny Florentine. I'm here today with Isaac from REL. What's up, man?
Dude, just another beautiful day in paradise. Glad to be here.
It's always good to see you. Not as many times do I get to do these podcasts with somebody that I actually kind of hang out with at the shows. So this will be entertaining and fun. I think everybody's going to enjoy it. We have a ton of product to talk about, some really cool new stuff, which is very exciting. But, you know, they may not know you like I know you.
Right.
So we need to know, how did you get into this industry? How did you get into hi-fi, Isaac?
Man, that's a that's a conversation in and of itself, right? Thanks for inviting me. By the way, you know, it is always great to see you, Lenny. This is a privilege as always. You know, I got into it because my dad was into it. When I was a little kid, you think about what fathers and sons do together. Sometimes they build cars, or you're into motorsports or cycling or whatever it is. And for me and my dad, it was definitely hi-fi. So by the time I was born, my dad was already seriously into it. I had a modest talent for musical instruments growing up, played a bunch of piano, violin, clarinet, euphonium, guitar. And that musical training and the ear that I had allowed us to spend more time together. So flash forward a bunch of years, graduate from college into the middle of the Great Recession. You know, waiting tables at some very, very high-end restaurants specializing in wine, and I walk into a Best Buy, Magnolia Design Center when they were still called that in Houston, and asked too many questions about a product. And so the manager came out to chat with me, and a bunch of great people saw talent and offered me an opportunity that I couldn't say no to. And I think that's what's been cool about this journey. So as the director of sales for REL, I also co-own Nibs Distro with my friend Shane Bettner. And it's not those titles I'm proud of. It's being able to tell you, right, I've done everything, right? I started as a salesperson, sales guy, third key, assistant manager, store manager, you know, opened a store, created, you know, training programs for the Big Blue Box, which were awesome. And so I, you know, have done all of these steps along the way, and I'm really grateful for that experience. So I got here, honestly, if you will, by doing all this stuff, you know, and that's given me a wonderful perspective I'm really grateful for.
And now, you know, REL, if people don't know, it's a subwoofer company. They make really good subwoofers. I have some RELs myself, and I can attest that they made me a believer. And you also made me a believer, and we'll get into it later, of the dual sub theory, because that wasn't a thing for me. But tell us a little bit about REL, maybe a little company history, or kind of what are you guys all about?
Well, we are all about bringing the awesome, right? You know, REL has been in business for over 35 years. John Hunter, Donald Brody, you know, formerly of Sumico, you know, took that company independently when Sumico was sold off to the big group Fine Sounds. And I think it's worth noting, even before we talk about REL today, you know, John Hunter was the first person to create $100 million company in audio. And he did that in the 90s when $100 million was it was worth a little bit more than it is today. And, you know, it wasn't because he was fascinated with money. And part of my story relates directly to this question. He cared about people. And so rather than trying to make as much money as possible, he went and found the best talent he could. And if you think about the legacy of Sumico, we can say that almost all of, you know, the sales portion of Wilson Audio, you know, came out of that group. Some of the executives for North America for Sony worked directly for John. You know, one of the greatest high-end brands in all of hi-fi, CH Precision, right? Where a lot of people are going to end up one day. It's right up there. If you know D'Agostino, then you know CH Precision, right? You know, the head of world sales. So John has, you know, he built a legacy with people. And when Fine Sounds came, you know, bought out Sumico, the opportunity to take REL private afforded John the opportunity to think about what values were most important to him with REL. And I know that's what you appreciate at home. So what are the core values, right? Number one, it needs to be able to play loud because we're Americans and we play at 11, bro. And I'm no different. I have a 6-pack of reference.
Yeah, you don't play at 11. You play at like 21.
Ooh,
You're
20, just, I just want that life experience.
You're already bragging on the line arrays, and we haven't even got there.
We haven't even, this is like the old commercial. I'm not just the head of sales. I'm also a customer, and John.
Oh my gosh, are you pulling out a hair plug for men commercial reference? Dude, side twirling? Is this where we're
That's the millennial, it's like millennial humor. Sorry guys, we know each other. This is why it's too easy to do this, But John thought about, hey, it's just got to keep up with the American expectation, right? But it's also got to be incredibly fast. And one of the things we'll talk about later as we talk about the product itself is most people are going to be surprised to hear this, but our reference products, they're capable of propagating signal. That's just input to output, right? Input of signal to driver making sound, 4 milliseconds. That is as fast as the fastest, highest end, most expensive loudspeakers in the world, right? So being fast meant that we could keep up with the best. And I think it's really important to keep it beautiful, right? So the making it beautiful, making it fast, and making it powerful really is what John and Donald brought to REL. And now here we are all these years later with, John has designed more than 35 of these products from scratch. And we keep winning awards. We keep selling out. We'll talk about that. Get your pre-orders in, guys. Here's where I have to do my job as director of sales rights as we're sold out on Series S. And so as time goes on, technologies evolve. And that's the cool thing about living in this day and age, right? So new materials, new driver technologies, new amplifiers, better cabinet materials allow John to keep moving forward towards this goal of being able to be lightning fast, play with anything, and also fit into every house.
And from the ground up, everything REL just amazes me. I gotta say, because not historically being a subwoofer guy and now believing in it, and it goes from the having 2 subs instead of 1, and then using I have the baseline blue cable,
huge,
and you can. It's wild what that does. And then you can connect the subwoofers directly to the speakers, which I didn't even know was a thing. And it makes my life so much easier. But we'll get to all that. Now I gotta go back to the S series before I get
sure.
too far off track. The brand new S series. Let's learn about. There's 4 new subwoofers.
Correct.
Okay, good. At least I got a little memory. I can remember.
Yeah, right. It's good.
And so then there's some really cool grills that I don't know anybody else that's done this before. So let's get into the new S series.
Yeah. So this is, and you see this every so many generations in any product, any technology. Right? Not all iPhone upgrades are. Upgrades are just new colors. Every so often, there's a monumental leap forward, and that's really what the new Series S line is. So, starting from the bottom, the 550 replaces the 510, the 850 replaces the 812, and then because of the incredible advancements in performance of the 2 flagship models within that line, the Carbon Special and the 212, those have been elevated to their own sub-reference series, which is called Black Label. So, if you're the, shall we say, the working audiophile who's dedicated their life like a crazy person like me to spending more on your hi-fi than putting into your 401k. By the way, I don't give financial advice. Don't do that.
I don't give that either.
Yeah. Then the Carbon Special, right, is this amazing opportunity to get close to that performance. But maybe the most special product that in terms of updates is the new 212. Then the 212 predecessors, the SX and the SE, and of course the original 212 are fabulous products. But with advancements in amplifier design, which I'll talk a little bit about, as well as significant advancements in not only the active portions of the drivers, right, the stuff that we see moving, but I'm sure Lenny, I'm not sure that all of your viewers know, but REL uses a lot of passive drivers in our designs. Passives allow us to get the best of both worlds, the speed and the snap, the transient response of a sealed design. But when you're pounding it, if you're playing at 21, then you get to put more pressure into the cabinet. That driver comes out, and you actually increase the volume, the interior cabinet volume in real time. So there are significant advancements to that. And in the 212, one of the things that I'll nerd out for a second is, we don't use stamped baskets anymore. And so you think about, for those of you who don't know how a loudspeaker driver is created, a basket, of course, is the thing that sits right into the cabinet itself that holds the driver and the voice coil and the magnet. Most of the time, for most affordable products, stamping that basket makes a lot of sense. It's strong enough. It's very, very cost effective. And then as you move up into higher end products, higher end loudspeakers in particular, right, you move into cast baskets. Like you think about the rims on your car, right? As you start getting into forged, spiral forged, all those kinds of things, it becomes denser, it becomes more rigid. So in the 212, we spend as much money in the baskets for the passives that fire down and backwards as we do for the two active drivers. These are significant costs as one example. To increase performance, you might not see it, but you're definitely going to feel it.
I mean, two 12-inch drivers.
Active plus two sister 12-inch drivers that are passive, constructed to the same standard and the same quality.
It's really unbelievable.
And getting to the beauty for a second, I would also argue, maybe we'll talk top down, so to speak, that the 212 is really elegant. It is actually narrower in profile than our T9X, which is a product that I think you may have run into once or twice. So
yeah, that is what I have. I have the T9X in the blue and the green because you make colors in those, which is awesome. And everybody comes in, they say, hey, this might match my car, which is wild.
Fun fact for your viewers, the difference in cost at retail between the nominal T9 and the SEs that you have doesn't even account for the cost of one can of the automotive grade paint that it takes to paint these things. So for people who are into cars, like Lenny, you're spot on. So these actually come from heritage racing colors. So like the red is essentially Ferrari Corsa Rosso. That's a Corsa Rosso. That's an expensive paint, and here you get that plus an upgraded driver for
upgraded feet. Money.
It's a ton, and so we do this everywhere. If you take a pair of these 212s and put them into a small theater or a hi-fi or a hybrid system, your opportunity to experience most of what makes us really special for a smaller footprint than your subwoofers, it's mind-boggling.
I actually didn't even know about the size thing. I just figured they were bigger, and that really does blow my mind that the profile is less. That is pretty special. And talking about special, what about the carbon special?
The carbon special, much like its younger brothers, the S850 and S550, went to training camp alongside the linebackers in the NFL. And what they did is they shed some fat and got some lean body mass. If you see them, they are hunched, they are aggressive, they are ready to do their work in a way that their predecessors, while elegant and beautiful, simply don't approach. These guys look like, in the carbon special especially, it looks like a 265-pound NFL middle linebacker in a tuxedo, right? And it had to be custom made, and they play like it too.
It does. It's wild. And they come with these wood grills, and I've never seen wood grills on a subwoofer. And I didn't know what to expect. I learned that they were coming in wood grills, and I'm like, okay. I don't know how this is going to turn out. But then when I saw it, it works really well. Like, it looks amazing. And I don't know, does it do anything to the sound at all, or is it strictly cosmetic?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, anybody who has mid-century modern or contemporary design, you were going to go crazy for these. These things are so beautiful. I didn't think I'd say that. Listen, I don't think subwoofers are beautiful in the traditional sense. These are beautiful. So
like you can convince your wife to put a subwoofer in the living room because it looks that good.
And I will stump for a moment so I got white 550s for my theater. White with these wooden grills looks spectacular. So, it is a visual upgrade for sure. And I would be careful not to sell this as a sonic upgrade. But it is true. I joke with my friends at various loudspeaker companies. A grill cloth is essentially lightly waterboarding your loudspeaker. It is like, you think about all the pressure, excuse me, if you think about all the pressure that builds up behind that, it's like breathing through your shirt. And so when you can remove that, which is why most high-end systems, particularly for demonstration, either use strings or no grills at all, you get just a little finer resolution. The benefit of the wood slats is that there is no compression of the air in front of the driver anymore. So yeah, they do sound better, but honestly, they look incredible. Like I think we're going to sell a lot of these in white with the matching wood grills, which are also available for an extra cost with the 212s and the 850s and white 50s, the 550s.
And you can line array these, and not everybody's going to know what a line array is, but this is like a REL specialty.
It sure is. It's funny. I was going to joke, and I don't know how you edit exactly, but I thought I might move my computer at one point downstairs for a part of the interview and show the reference system behind me, right? Ooh. So depending upon your editing, maybe we come back to that in a couple minutes and let me reset up so that we can have a cool backdrop for that.
Yeah, I like it. We can do that.
Yeah, right. But going to the question of the line array, and then I'll keep it light here, and I'll let you do your thing. The line array is a great product. The line array, I'll be careful to say it's not what I'm trying to convince every single person to get to, Lenny. You're actually where I want all people to get to. You had the experience of one subwoofer, game-changing, properly set up, particularly a REL with the high-level connections to your loudspeaker amplifier like you discovered changes everything. And then
it absolutely changes everything. And then even the cable upgrade changed everything. But like for me, having to change stuff out all the time, because I'm always changing stuff, and to be able to just connect it to a speaker changed you don't even need a sub output on your amp. It doesn't matter anymore.
That's exactly right. And you bring up a great point, because for people who are just getting started, right, and have entry level, stereo receivers, and maybe there's not a sub out, and there are products that don't have subwoofer outs, or you have a legacy component, something really great from the 60s or 70s, right? Definitely don't have subwoofer outputs. Being able to connect directly to the amplifier output terminals or the speakers themselves, I do the same thing, by the way, Lenny at home is connecting the speaker, affords you two things. Number one, the ability to bring low bass into any hi-fi, regardless of that system's design, which is not true for all products. And number two, and I would argue even more importantly, you're getting the totality of what your system sounds like. One of the reasons subwoofers are so hard to integrate, but RELs sound great, they're so fast, they work in so many systems, is because we're not taking output from a preamplifier, which doesn't have the sound of your amplifier or the sound of your loudspeakers. Not to mention the delay and phase characteristics, which are just, we could simply say, the timing characteristics of those two really important parts of your system. Well, all of a sudden, of course it's hard to set up. When you use a REL and you get that sound, you get the sonic signature of the amplifier and the speaker, and you keep the timing correct. And it is, we talk a lot about frequency. I'm sure you have plenty of people who have talked on here who are really much more knowledgeable engineers. I'm just a lay sales guy, but
way more knowledgeable than I am.
Timing they tell me that timing is everything, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do, is preserve time. Right? Keep that tone and texture. So I agree with you. And if you're going to change out your system on a regular basis, it's easier too. So, a couple of wins there.
Oh, it's a huge win. I gotta tell you. And for people who don't have sub outs, who don't want to mess with that, it's perfect. The legacy thing, you have a vintage system, you can hook it up to a vintage receiver, something like that. And I'll give an honorable mention to your classic series if you do want that, vintage look. You guys also make, the vintage style all wood subwoofers as well. Not getting off the Series S too much, but yeah, I mean, I think this new series is amazing, and that's just two of them. Then you have the 550 and the 850.
The 850, you're exactly right. So let's touch on, so a couple things that tie them all together. I told you one is the form factor, which if when your viewing audience goes to look at this compared to the original Carbon Special, the S812 and the S510, you'll notice that these are much more in profile, like I said, haunched and aggressive, and that takes its design language and the benefits from the reference line. So you'll notice 31s and 32s have that same form factor. And it turns out that compressing the height helps to control the back wave of the driver. So it's not just beautiful, that is absolutely functional across the whole line. The other thing that I think is important to touch on is the upgrades to the amplifiers. So these amplifiers across all the products from the 212 all the way to the 550 are hugely upgraded. New circuits, new driver devices, right, allow us to bias them differently. A lot of these amplifiers have more power. We use better caps, right? So, some nerdy, ultra high-end hi-fi stuff somehow finds its way into, the core of our line. Products that effectively everybody, can afford, right? Some of the highest end components in hi-fi exist in them. And one of the major changes is, particularly in the 850 and up, is the new linear class D amplifiers. And so, most people are familiar with class D as, having a switch mode power supplies and, class D output stage, right? So they switch very, very fast, allowing for a lot of efficiency. Now, one of the downsides to that is you can, if you don't have a robust enough power supply, you can still run into current limiting, right? Nothing is unlimited. But when you do a linear, meaning class AB or big honking transformer power supply, which we do in the 850 Carbon Special and 212, well, now we can store gobs and gobs of linear power supply, which is way, way higher in terms of its power volume than the class D output stages. So think about it as effectively having way more dynamic headroom. So, the 212, for example, now can play at, even though we're going to rate it at 1,000 watts, Lenny, but it will play at 1,200 watts continuously for more than 7 minutes. It will also play 1,400 watts continuously for more than 3 minutes. So these are unbelievable power supplies into big amps, and that's part of what the 850 does for $4,000. This is an approachable product, right? 12-inch driver, 800 watts, right? But again, with this massively overbuilt power supply. And so if you have a traditional four-standing speaker, an 850 is going to be one hell of a way to go. And then if you're in a smaller room like me for my theater, for example, where I have some stand mount speakers, I'm going to use a pair of 550s. And the 550s benefit from all of the amplifier technology upgrades outside of the linear power supply. So it uses all the better drivers, a better driver component within the circuit, I should say, as well as better output devices, better cabinet, better cone driver, better passive, etc. And for a smaller room, or for people, maybe like you, right? Maybe this is the right product if you're not trying to take up too much space, but you want a ton of power.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, 550 watts, 850 watts on those, they're beautiful. And the one thing that maybe you can help explain to people that, REL has made me a believer in, like I said earlier, is having stereo pairs for your subwoofers, because it was a little bit of a hard sell for me when I started hearing about this. I'm like, I'm not a bass head. I don't. I'm not. It's not me. But doing it has really changed things.
Yeah, it's one of those things that once you experience, I joke with people. Um, I'll ask people to raise their hands. How many have heard of subwoofer? People will raise. You've been in some of my demos. People like how many people have heard subwoofers? How many have heard stereo subwoofers? Maybe a lead into to a bit would be how many have heard line arrays? And you realize that most people have heard a subwoofer, right? Particularly in the context of point 0.1 LFE home theater, which is where a lot of subwoofers get a really bad name. And a fun fact, right? It takes at least 100 milliseconds to do room correction. Okay, 100 milliseconds is a very, very, very long time, and especially if you think about a pretty middle of the road, decent loudspeaker. Think about a KEF. Right, a KEF, not a reference, just a quality mid-level product, $1,000-ish. Right, it's a 12-ish, 14-ish milliseconds propagation delay. Right, how long does it take from crossover to output? Okay, so is that 10 times faster than room equalization in a device, right? And if you do DSP equalization, which happens a lot, right, that process takes anywhere between 48 and 56 milliseconds. So part of the magic of REL is that we use analog filters. Now, a lot of people are surprised to learn, there's no digital filters. We don't use DSP at all in our products. Even the reference product that has the remote control that you can see that changes crossover points is just a digitally controlled analog crossover, so that ultimately we don't introduce digital into our signals anywhere. And that's one of the reasons that when you see our setups in real life, come see us at Axpona. We're gonna have something really fun for you, just like we did last year. You're gonna see that they never fire straight, right? I don't believe that you can, if your speakers are set up properly. You're just never gonna have subwoofers firing like that. It just cheats physics, right? And so we are not going to give people the ability to turn a knob. We have that phase switch that you see on the back, right? Because a knob is a potentiometer, right? A fancy word for a thing that takes up loss. That's all it does. Is the knob eventually erodes, right, the sound quality when you're just turning it like a rheostat. So we give you that phase switch, right? That's 0 degrees or 180 degrees. And a helpful hint to your viewers, well over 85% of systems are going to end up with that switch at 180 degrees. So that's a conversation for a different day. It doesn't mean it's out of phase. Think of it as timing. It's really more delay. It's accounting for how long it takes for everything to go through the rest of your system, right? That's it. So, we have that phase switch. You move the speakers, right? Reach out to us at rel.net, right? We're easy to get a hold of. We love to talk to our customers, and we will help you orient it. But as you found, you put them pretty close to your speakers. You listen to some music that with a deep bass track. You move them left and right a little bit. You toe them in and out, and there will be a point, where everything really snaps into focus.
So the other interesting thing is I find that the RELs work really well for music, and a lot of people equate subwoofers to home theater, but you guys are more, I would say, it still would work great with home theater, but I think it's a more musical sub.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we are probably better known in many ways for the music application. For many years, going back to when I was in retail and even before, because it's funny, I knew who John Hunter was when I was 12 or 13. This guy was in Stereophile, the absolute sound, talking about system setup and all that kind of stuff. And here we are all these years later, applying those same types of things to these systems, right? And so, ultimately, the way that these things get set up in your room allow for tremendous, flexibility, right? And I think it's something that we worked really hard to do.
Yeah, and I definitely think it shows. I again, not a big bass guy. I didn't want a subwoofer in a lot of things, but let me tell you, it makes a huge difference.
I'll tell you if I may touch on that briefly, because, and this is where I made that joke that started off the interview. When I bought this house, I built this house, and it was literally for the hi-fi room. I'd love to show you for a few moments. And it was dedicated to this space downstairs. And my housewarming gift to myself was to reach out to John and buy a pair of the reference number 32s. Why? Because, and people, your viewers can do this at home. This is such an easy thing. I think you've seen me do this, walk back and forth to your viewers. Guys, ladies, walk in front of your stereo, one side of the room, and say the same phrase over and over again slowly. I like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, right? Just like from, that really dates me. That's typing.
Yeah, that's typing. That is text
right?
and keyboard right there.
Right? But it has a good combination of consonants and vowels as well that activates the room. Walk back and forth and you'll notice that the two sides of your room absolutely don't sound the same. One side sounds a little more hollow, the other one sounds a little more dead or a little bit more rich. And I'll do these demonstrations in real time, and where Isaac, sound the best, or at least the most natural, is never in one of the positions, right? That's the same on the left and right loudspeaker side. It's just the best for each side. So really what a pair of subwoofers is doing, as you're experiencing, is we're not fixing the speaker, right? The speaker's great. You bought it because it sounds awesome. The mid-range does not come from the woofer, but you are putting a loudspeaker in the spot in the room, ideally, where the mid-range and the treble are the most natural, the most harmonically rich, and the most extended. If you do that, by definition, it's not in the space of the room that makes the lowest bass, because those two places can't be the same thing. So you get to put a woofer, right? You put a REL into that spot near your speakers. It's very, very close, but it makes way deeper bass as you move back and forth and side to side. You've heard it yourself. Locks into place, and then what you've done is you've fixed your room. So the space of the recording now appears equal to you left and right. That is game changing. And so I tell people, if you could just get to two subwoofers like Lenny is talking about, you have done God's great work, in terms of removing bad audio from the world. The line arrays are great. It's the next level. But if I could sell just stereo subs for the rest of my career to everybody listening, I would be beyond happy, because it is going to transform your experience, not just with big rock and EDM, but when we set these up right, you can't hear them, and all of a sudden acoustic music is reproduced with so much space and so much natural decay. It becomes hard to listen to a system without that true full range extension.
And now that you've told us all about it, can we go see this room?
You know what? I think we can.
All right, so we are seeing these REL subs in. Look at the size of this. Oh my gosh, man.
Do you want me to go stand up so you have some?
Yeah. Go stand back there. Let's show them. Let's show this. This is wild.
Right.
So, okay, now they even look bigger.
I know, right? Like, because of the perspective. So Wilson Alexia V's, a 6-pack of the reference number 32s. So yeah, it's they are. If you have the space, this is as good as it gets. I would say that the 6-pack of REL number 32s, this is, if you're asking what our flagship product is, it's not a single woofer. It's really this line array. And if you have even taller speakers, and you have 7-foot tall Kodos from Griffin, for example, unbelievable multi-tower speakers, world-class. Skyscraping. You'd actually do 5 per side to match the height. So if you think about it, why does this matter? One of my favorite demos in this totally amazing world-class system is to play a harmonica track, a very specific one from a show called Cowboy Bebop, Spooky Dokie, off of that album. And I will play this whole system, right, with all the subwoofers on, and then I will take just the top 2 woofers off, play the same track at the same volume, and I can usually count down about 5 or 6 seconds before people ask me to turn it down or turn it off. It's not about more bass. it's about recreating the space of the recording environments because there's a mathematical relationship to two things. Number one of the problems that we have as human beings, particularly in the West, is we use words like treble, mid-range, and bass. These are completely arbitrary words. They have no relationship to real life. I'm sort of nerdy. I have a bachelor's of science and psychology from Texas A&M, and I specialize in neuroscience. And I assure you, as a person who studied the structures of the brain that allow us to perceive the world, your brain has no idea what bass is or treble. It's all sound. So when we pull away the lowest frequencies from a recording that's entirely acoustic, what you're doing is you're taking away the foundational wave or the carrier wave that allows all of the high frequency information to make sense in terms of space. So I often tell people, particularly the client buying a system like this, that I'm not selling you more bass. In fact, all 6 of these produce exactly as much bass as 2 of them properly set up. It's not more. It's that we're recapturing the subtlety of the bass that is above the tweeter. And one of the things you might have noticed, and your viewers will probably have noticed, this is true for Wilson, it's true for Magico, it's true for Griffin, it's true for a lot of great loudspeaker companies. You'll notice that as you get into more expensive 6-figure territory, the speakers get taller and they start putting mid-bass drivers and bass drivers above the tweeter. Why? Because it turns out that the microphone can hear everything, and we're putting most of the time all of our information low, both in frequency and height. There is just as much bass information at the height of your tweeter as there is at the height of your woofer. And that's why it becomes spacious. It becomes natural because all of a sudden these other instruments appear in context in space. So yes, obviously big systems can play louder, but for your viewers who really want to know why, guys, I listen to more acoustic guitar music and jazz than you could imagine. Of course, I listen to hip hop and Taylor Swift and rock and roll too, because I like everything, but most of my music isn't that low in frequency. But the difference in hearing or listening to a great double bassist play in a church with and without a line array like this is breathtaking.
That was going to be my question, but you already answered it. Was how does it work with those being taller than the speaker? But what you said makes absolute total sense.
The microphone doesn't
everybody
know.
Everybody that was looking at that's like, okay, that's just going to totally overtake the speaker, but that is not the case.
Nope, not at all. And I said it once before, but I'll say it again because it bears repeating. If you have a properly set up subwoofer in your system, even a single one, thanks for buying REL, right? You'll play as much bass as loudly as 2 of the same sub. It's about reducing the amount of power, right, that goes to each sub because, and I will be nerdy for a moment, there's a logarithmic function of distortion, right? We've all seen THD curves, right? So for every 50% reduction in output of your amplifier or excursion of your driver, you start to net significant gains in terms of lower measurable distortion. So the irony is that the 6 woofers in my system play exactly as loud as just 1 or 2 would, but each of them play less loud individually, giving them each more dynamic headroom. The other thing I would say that is easier demonstrated in person, but again, come see us at Exponent, guys, 2026. Can't wait to see you there. And I get to do this in real life. Lenny, you've watched me not only walk back and forth in a room, but you've also watched me put my head up and dip my head down. And you're going to hear my voice, and you can do this at home, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to hear your voice change relative to how close you are to the floor. So each of these 3 woofers does something different. They're not all playing the same thing. It's partly what makes REL special. There aren't other products where you're going to set the crossovers and the outputs, the high level gain the same or differently. So the bottom woofers are crossed over the lowest. They reproduce floor shake and floor crawl, the true subterranean bass that you think about. The middle one helps to reinforce mid-bass energy. This is really often centered in the high 30s to high 40s, low 50s. what instruments are there? The bass guitar and the kick drum. So that driving energy of music, really the fundamentals exist right there. And this is where you have to come see us in person or listen to one of these at one of your authorized dealers. But that top one is magic, because it's not about bass. They're not about low bass, at least. It's crossed over the highest in frequency, and its job is to recapture the atmospheric bass I was talking about that exists in where the tweeter is. You know, a microphone is full range. We don't do three-way mics, do we? So we challenge ourselves as designers and audiophiles by listening to speakers that are multi-way, that for necessary reasons, right? A tweeter can't do what a bass driver can do. This is the limitation. These guys are brilliant, right? It's not a condemnation. There is no better way to do this. What you do if you love your speaker, and guys, I might surprise you when I say this, but please, please, please don't buy that stack of woofers before you buy your badass speaker. Go buy your Wilson, go buy your Magico, go buy your Griffin, whatever you love. I'm telling you, go buy the best loudspeaker you can reasonably afford. Then save your shekels and come see me, and I will gladly help build the system you want. The bass coming from the 32s in this system is not a substitution for having the world-class speaker to start with. And it is one of the things that I think shock people when they call me and say, so I think I can do a pair of bookshelf speakers and a 6-pack. Listen, I really appreciate the intent and the love you have for us and our product, but you know, we do this in steps and in stages, you know, for a reason. So your goal is to complement your main speaker with the right stack of woofers. And if you are like me and you listen to a lot of live acoustic music, classical music, jazz, contemporary guitar, all of those things have so much information that is very low frequency above the tweeter. This is going to be really eye-opening for you to listen to your favorite recordings for the first time. You're going to go, wow. Also, not only did I not hear any of that stuff before, they're way better musicians than I thought. It becomes technique that becomes associated. So yeah, back to the original point I digressed from 3 minutes ago. Yeah, I'm not trying to overpower your speakers, right? People are going to see this. They walk in, they're totally intimidated. And that's why I usually start with harmonica, blues harmonica, and guitar to help people understand it's not about overwhelming you with pressure, but rather to recreate the space vertically as well as stereo left and right. And when you do that, it also helps to make that back wall disappear.
Above and beyond what I could have ever have asked for. Thank you for showing us your system. I love the line array there and explaining it. Like explaining it was a big deal because you could have just showed it and people just been like, whoa. But explaining the reasoning was super important. Isaac, it's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Thanks, Lenny. I can't really appreciate say thanks enough.
Yeah, this has been a great time, and we got a treat and got to see your system, which is amazing. So for Lenny Florentine, the Audio Insider podcast from Exponent, and Isaac from REL, and look at that system behind them. That's amazing. We will see you guys next time.
See you at Exponent 2026.
2026.